Hi everyone. I've been doing this series, this Storytime with Zingdad series, where I've been telling you about my experiences in animal communication, and I've had a number of queries. Really, quite a lot of you have asked me to to talk about dogs and cats, to talk about domestic animals, because of course these are more relatable. You've got your own domestic animals at home. The difficulty is that if you're as close to your dogs as I am to my dogs, they become very much like surrogate children. And it's the difficulty is not that I don't have stories to tell. The difficulty is that I actually have too many stories, and they're all interrelated, and to tease out a story, and it's so very personal to me. But I've decided to give a shot at telling a story about Pikachu. So this is him. This is my boy Pikachu, and he is incredibly dear to me. I really do love him, as I suppose, as the way many people would love their children. And over the time I've gotten to know him, I've just gotten closer and closer and closer to him. He's really an amazing soul, and there is a very special connection between us, like a spiritual contract between us. And I think if I tell you the story, perhaps it'll give you a different perspective on animal souls, and perhaps you'll see things a little differently. But anyway, let me tell you the story for the sake of the story, and you can do with it what you want. The story begins a couple of years ago, around New Year's Eve, a couple of years ago. Um, Pikachu and I were alone at home. I didn't feel like going out to a rowdy New Year's Eve party with a lot of alcohol and that sort of thing. So, well, Pikachu and Maya and I were alone at home, and there were fireworks nearby. Now, fireworks are really strictly forbidden in this area, but there were holiday makers, and I suppose they didn't know, and they had a lot of fireworks, lots of fireworks. And I was trying my best to meditate at the time. I was doing my own process, my own letting go of the old year and seeing in the new year. I had a whole thing going. And at some point, Pikachu came to let me know he's got something's bothering him. And he was shivering. He was sitting next. I was sitting on my bed, and he was on the ground, and he was looking up at me with his eyes big, and he was shivering. And I thought, that's very strange. It's not nearly cold enough for him to be shivering. So I picked him up and stuck him under the blanket and tried to go back to my meditations, but there was something very strange about him. He just kept shivering. And so I put him on my lap and sort of gave him a cuddle, but he was rattled. So I decided, well, all right, I better stop what I'm doing and have a look and see what's going on with him. And I'd never seen him like this. I mean, I'd only had him for a couple of years at that point, but he had been such a easygoing, happy-go-lucky, nothing phases him sort of a dog. The people who we got him from said he was born with his tail wagging. He literally arrived in this world tail wagging. And he was that kind of a dog. His tail never stopped wagging. He's such a happy dog. And here he was in the state. When I really paid attention to him, I could see that what was happening to him, the closest analogy I could get for this was I have had a panic attack. I know what a panic attack is. And he looked like he was in that state. His eyes were kind of glazed, and he was panicking. I thought, oh my goodness, it's the fireworks. So what do I do for him? I had never experienced this before. I didn't have dogs who were scared of fireworks before him. Um, so he sort of indicated that he wanted to go outside. So I opened the door, and he just ran. He ran out into the night. By the time I had shoes on and had a torch and could go and chase after him, he was gone. I ran all the way up the road. He was sort of half a kilometer away before I found him. Picked him up, brought him back home again, and he was in a state. So that sent me on a whole journey of discovery. And it took me quite some months to begin to pass together the story. And the story that arose was very interesting. Um, the first part of the story that really puzzled me is um, this was more sort of soul reintegration really than animal communication that I was doing on him. I was engaged in a journey of really trying to heal his psyche. But anyway, I went deep into his journey, and you know what I found? When I went to look for the first moment where this trauma was caused, because why is he so traumatized by fireworks? Why have none of my dogs ever been traumatized, and he was? I found an image of a leopard, a leopard cub, um, sitting in the felt in the long grass with his mother, and he was like kind of leaning against her and suckling from her, and then there was this impossibly loud bang, and his mother fell down dead right next to him. And of course, what had happened was a hunter had shot his mother right there. And in that moment, as I got it, what I was actually being shown, this I said a leopard. He wasn't a leopard. He was a cheetah. I apologize. A cheetah cub sitting next to his cheetah mother. Um, and in that moment, I was kind of brought out of my meditation by the thought, but I've got this little dog, and now I'm being shown a cheetah. And there was such a clear, I can't explain this to you. It was not something that I questioned or doubted. It just surprised me. Because knowing Pikachu, he is such a little athlete. I mean, he's this little dachshund body, but he is such an athlete, and he just loves to run, and he's just so full of energy and go. And I could see his cheetah nature. Cheetahs are, for those of you who don't know, incredibly fast. They're very athletic. They're runners. They run 120 kilometers an hour, sort of thing. They're really fast. So when I could get over this idea, this cross-species sort of transition, I went to ask about that. I went to ask my own spirit guide. I said, so does this happen? And he said, regularly. Right now on planet Earth, there are so many species whose opportunities for incarnation are really diminishing. So many species that are dying out, so many species that are becoming extinct. And we have this burgeoning population of domestic animals, because that's what we as humans are providing opportunities for. So a lot of animal souls are transitioning. They're moving up the scale of densities, and they're transitioning from being wild animals to being domestic animals. And well, anyway, so I had one of these. I had a little dog who was a leopard, who was deeply traumatized, who was a cheetah, who was deeply traumatized by this experience of his mother being shot right next to him. And it was this bang and this shock. And every time thereafter he heard a really loud bang, like fireworks, the instant association was with having his mother being shot. So what did I do? Well, I went back to have a look at the whole story. And there are many bits and pieces to this story of how he made it from being a cheetah and that cub was then rescued by the hunter that shot the mother, who then understood what he had done and felt terribly ashamed and guilty. He brought this cheetah cub home, gave it to his son. His son raised the cheetah cub. His son became an avid conservationist, I was told, because he had raised the cheetah cub and loved this animal, who became a domesticated animal with a son. And then he had an incarnational journey, Pikachu. He had an incarnational journey of becoming a dog, and and then he became my dog. And here he is. And with me, we've been working through the trauma, and he's doing amazingly. He's learning to cope with loud bangs and these kinds of shocks. He's learning to find his resilience. Um, Still not, he's still got his stuff. He's still got it. So, for example, a little while ago, as a result of insecurity, he started marking inside the house, and I didn't know what to do with that. And uh, I actually wanted to make this point that many of you seem to be indicating um, a lot of surprise at my incredible talent at animal communication. And I wanted to actually make the point. I don't really think I'm the best at animal communication, because there was stuff I couldn't find with Pikachu. I couldn't figure out why he's marking. And I contacted somebody else who is an animal communicator, and she did a reading for me on Pikachu. And she found information that I couldn't, and she had amazing accuracy that I didn't have. So um, it's something I can do, but I think I'm probably better at telling the stories than perhaps many other animal communicators are. There are some really, really amazingly skilled animal communicators out there. And if you're having issues with your dogs and cats, with even if it's just you don't understand why they're going through stuff, or you don't understand their behavior, or you don't understand how they're relating to you, I would suggest looking around and finding a competent animal communicator and getting them to do a reading for you and your dog, and or your cat or your budgie or whatever it is that you have. Um, get them to help you to understand your animal better and your relationship with the animal better. Get them to help you to communicate with your animal. Because ultimately, I really do believe we all have this ability to communicate with our animals. Learn how. You can do this. I do believe all of us can do this. Learn how to communicate with animals and with your animals. As a result of the feedback that I got, as it happens, her name is Isabel, the feedback I got from Isabel about Pikachu and the help that she gave, a problem that had been going on for months and months and months was solved like overnight. And he just doesn't mark indoors anymore. And it was another insecurity that he was having. So there are more stories I want to tell you about Pikachu, and also about his sister Maya. There are more stories I want to tell you about them. But today's story is really quite simple. It's really about the awareness that a shock that happened to a soul that was incarnated as a cheetah cub was carried across, that I know of, another lifetime as a dog, and then into this lifetime as a dog, and is now being resolved through love and understanding with an owner that really gets what it is. I don't just think that he's stupid or that there's something wrong with him. If there's going to be fireworks, I don't just lock him in a room and wait for the fireworks to be over. I sit with him and I say, I get it. I know what's going on with you. And I hold him through it. And that brings him through. And each time he passes through these kind of panic attacks, it's a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. So that's a story, the story of Pikachu when he was was a cheetah cub, and where he is now. And it's my invitation to you to engage, to either learn how to do animal communication or to find an animal communicator. I'm not offering my services. This is not what I'm best at. I'm good when I have a personal relationship with the animal, like I do with mine, with the baboons, with the monkeys. But there are people out there who are great at this, and please find them if you're having issues. With that, it's time for me and Pikachu to say goodbye to you. But there will be more from Pikachu and I and Maya at some later date. Bye-bye.